Hello everyone and welcome. I've been thinking of new abilities, weapons, or items Nintendo could introduce for Link in Breath of the Wild 2. So far we have seen his time reversal, him teleporting or warping through solid objects, doing something to make his entire hand glow, and some people think this droplet is a hint at another power. If you have been following our channel or podcast for a while, you will know when the first trailer released, we immediately seen similarities with unused beta and concept artwork, and now we have even more. With each new trailer and clip of Breath of the Wild 2, we are seeing new versions of older concepts, or unused ideas, and this could give a hint at what to expect for some of Link's new abilities. We will cover some other concept art as well, showing off what I believe was an idea for a temple or dungeon entrance, and some other cool stuff that I hope makes it into the sequel. But I wanted to start with the new abilities. The only real new clip we received during the newest trailer, if you can call it that, was actually a pretty big reveal for the game. But some of you may have not been that surprised by it, one of which implies various different versions of it as well. We also may be seeing several new abilities Link will have thanks to the malice and the bracelet going up his arm. This first piece of concept art, at first it looked like an odd sci-fi idea that Nintendo thought of and quickly moved on from, like some of the many other designs for Link. However, during one of the trailers, we see what looks like a dragon head on his shield shooting fire at an enemy in a cave. This immediately reminded people of the same artwork, which shows a different version, which seems to be attached directly to his arm. Some thought because this ended up in the game as the dragon head, perhaps the other things we see in this artwork would also appear. Then, the next scene revealed by Nintendo confirmed this, the Master Sword being broken in half, which Breath of the Wild originally had different versions of a damaged Master Sword, with one of them found within the code of the game being equipable, which we will get to in a moment. For now, let's take a look at the various abilities and items Link has in this concept art. As many are thinking because these two were brought to the sequel, we have a good chance of seeing some of the other concepts appear in the game. Comment below and let us know which you would like to see, or if you can think of one of your own, as we already know that Link will have other abilities or powers from his arm. First, we have this new version of the beetle from Skyward Sword, which Nintendo also had a different version of planned for Breath of the Wild, but was meant to be used with the Sheikah Slate when the game was still on Wii U, and was designed specifically to work with two screens, so it was removed when the game was ported to the Switch. It seems they had multiple ideas for various weapons. They have concept art of this in the Creating a Champion's book. What is interesting about this beetle is that its design looks identical to the hand attachment he has in the full image, as if it could be used for other abilities, but can break off from the rest of Link's arm to become a beetle and fly around. I would love for a version of the beetle to appear, but I'm just not a big fan of the idea of Link's arm being completely missing, or wearing this thing all over his arm. So I would prefer the beetle we've seen in the other concept artwork, but since Link seemingly won't have the Sheikah Slate with him, I wonder how it would appear if it does. Possibly as a standalone item, or will it sort of magically appear from Link's new arm bracelet, similar to the Sheikah Slate magically allowing bombs to appear out of nowhere. The next item is the grappling hook, which honestly just looks like it would be weird or awkward to use. Notice Link still has the broken sword in his left hand. I wonder if this was an idea for Link to switch back to his left hand to use a sword, or if he will be able to hold two weapons at once. It seems to shoot from a cannon shape at the end of his arm. It would likely have a similar use as Wind Waker's grappling hook or Skyward Sword's whip. Other concept art for this item has a Sheikah champion with a different type of grappling hook, naming it hookshot-like, and even a Kokiri champion with a whip. The hookshot and whips are fine, but if it shows up in some form, I would want it to be more based on the claw shot or hookshot, not necessarily a grappling hook, which just seems to be more used for swinging, like in Wind Waker. Similar to the Sheikah Slate magically creating solid objects, it would be interesting to see Link throw or shoot a rope or chain-like beam from his hand or bracelet, and it attach to something and pull Link towards it. When the first trailer released and we seen Link's hand glowing and the other magic green hand catching him, and in another scene holding down Ganondorf, I had the idea of them allowing Link to project or send the magical hand out from his to grab, hold, or bring back items, like when you hookshot a small item in Ocarina of Time. And if it is a larger or specific object, it would pull Link towards it, working as a mix of the beetle and clawshot, which the beetle in Skyward Sword was originally planned to be a rocket-propelled fist. So it kinda seems like something they would do. Maybe it could be something like Midna's magic or her hair pulling you to her when you jump at certain locations as Wolf Link. The next image has Link shooting a bomb out of a cannon his arm has turned into. Like the other items that come from his arm, it still has the same red circle lights, almost looking like a little face on this one. It also makes me wonder if it would be magically summoned or a physical object. The previous two weapons seem to be physically attached and part of whatever this is on his arm, but if the bombs are, how would he get more if it was made from part of his arm? Maybe it just shoots the bombs you acquire in other ways. As Link doesn't have the Sheikah Slate, I do wonder how he will be able to get new bombs. Hopefully, it's not one of the classic weapons that Nintendo leaves out of the sequel to make it feel new and different, as they did with the first game, and items like the hookshot, fishing pole, and others. So how would we get them? I would love for the bomb crop to return, but we didn't really see them growing anywhere in Breath of the Wild, though the Gorons do have cannons that are designed specifically to shoot bombs, as well as train tracks powered by bombs. So maybe they did exist at one point, until around the time of the first game, and could be replanted and regrown in certain areas, now that the threat of the Divine Beast is gone. And this is the sequel's way of giving us bombs without the Sheikah Slate, while also making the Goron economy begin to thrive again. Here we have Link's arm transforming into a hammer, which did appear in the original, but obviously in a completely different form as a standard hammer. As for this appearing in the sequel, it would be a bit odd to see Link's arm or bracelet turn into a hammer, but I would love to see a giant wacky hammer return like we've seen in Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker, with some sort of special feature like when we hit the ground and cause the enemies to bounce or fall over. A funny idea would be if it was a magic hammer, only allowed to be picked up by Link. Maybe it only works with the bracelet on his arm, but I would love to see something like Thor's hammer, and the Bokoblins or Lizalfos constantly struggling to pick it up, as they like to run towards the nearest weapon to pick it up and use it. We have a bit more to cover, but the final weapon on this concept art is a unique take on the bow and arrow. It appears to have either a similar arrow as the ancient arrow, or something like the blue Sheikah energy we see on all of the other weapons. What seems a bit odd is the arrow itself going straight through a hole or tunnel which connects the bow to Link's arm. Obviously arrows are already in the game, and will continue to be, so there's no real need for this, but it would be cool to see if Nintendo could come up with some new types of arrows. As fun as electric, ice, fire, and ancient arrows are, I'm sure Nintendo could be really creative with coming up with new powers or effects for the arrows. Even something as simple as tying a rope to an arrow, shooting it at something, and using it to either swing across or climb up. Interestingly, in each of the images, Link is wearing this Guardian or Ancient Armor style mask over his face, though the rest of the artwork is more simple versions just showing the red glowing circles from it. While I do believe Link could certainly get a mask or armor that looks like this, as we already have masks and helmets that are in this style and cover his face, with such as the Divine Beast masks, and some others. But I kind of thought it was weird when everyone thought Nintendo wasn't showing Link's face in the second trailer because it was damaged and his eye was missing, which I believe was based off of this artwork or people just saying random stuff that they personally wanted to see with no actual proof. We've seen the corruption or markings from the malice stop around the area of his shoulder and neck and not go any further. In the artwork, he also has his leg completely covered in the same armor, which covered in the same style of armor, which also didn't appear in the trailer. And the bracelet thing that we see covering his arm in the trailer looks completely different than the one shown in the artwork. So I really don't know why people thought the mask over his damaged face was proof of him having a damaged face or missing eye in the game. There's also this other artwork. For whatever reason, Link is missing his entire right arm in the above concept art, though this is also a much older Link with a mustache and beard, as well as hair down to his chest. Yes, this one is wearing an eye patch, but we do see Link's full arm in the game. It is interesting seeing Link use his left hand for the Master Sword again, though I don't want him to lose his entire arm just to make that possible. Maybe if the game allowed us to choose if we wanted him to be left or right-handed, as they probably should have done for Skyward Sword. Not a weapon necessarily, but another item we see that is missing from the original is the fishing rod we see on the back of the horse Link is riding. For the Zelda game that has a giant ocean stretch across two sides of Hyrule, and more rivers, ponds, and lakes than most other Zelda games combined, it was odd not getting a fishing pole, especially since catching fish is a big part of the game. We even have an entire village full of fishermen and people selling fish right off of their boats and the docks. It would have been cool if the old man would have given Link a fishing pole when he asks for Link to make his meal, which involves catching a fish. Then we could get upgraded poles or lures as we play through the game, and maybe even weaker poles will break if the fish is too big or rare. So I really hope it shows up in the sequel. They could even give it some silly abilities, like how we can almost always distract Ganon with one. I like the idea of hooking random food or items to it, and casting it in front of a bokoblin, and having the bokoblin try chasing after it or something fun like that. As for things and other artwork that could return, we have these golden shrines, which I actually discovered in the beta for Breath of the Wild, and made a video about here. We have the human form of Ganondorf, looking similar to the Twilight Princess version, standing on top of a floating island. And a human form of Ganondorf could be hinted at thanks to the mummified Ganon appearing in the first trailer. And we had several islands as well as the castle floating in the sky in the second trailer. If we remember, the first time Ganondorf had a floating island was actually when he made the castle rise up in the adult timeline of Ocarina of Time. Some things I would like to see make an appearance in Breath of the Wild 2 is this giant structure sticking out of the ground, which could have been an early version of the pillars that house the Guardians and stick out towards the castle. This one looks like it may be a special entrance to a shrine. Maybe some of the bigger or more important shrines had these larger entrances, but it could just be the entrance to something else underground. Finally, we have what I think is the inside of the beta golden shrines. One image has writing on the wall, which didn't appear in the game, but reminds me of the dungeons of A Link to the Past, and maybe the Shadow Temple, where we could find words written on them. He also has a lantern, which doesn't appear either, though we do get flaming swords and other ways of carrying fire. And one of my favorites, this one looks more like a traditional dungeon, or one of the larger puzzle-oriented shrines. This image inside a beta shrine even has a meter for Link's shield, and the game did originally have a magic meter. Finally, the last piece of concept art is my favorite one. This huge underground or cave area, which has the entrance to what I hope was an actual dungeon or temple. Otherwise, why have it so detailed and large if it's simply another shrine? Which concept art or cut content would you like to see be brought into Breath of the Wild 2? Or do you have some of your own ideas? And thank you for watching. We have a few new Patreon supporters that I would like to give a thank you to. If you would like your own shout out, then head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can receive a ton of different rewards while helping us out. Those of you who are just donating a single dollar, that really does help more than you would think. Thank you Monica Spath, NORNARB, Shadow to Us, SOBERX, 𝗟𝗏𝗄, Natsu, Rusty Caulfield, Zoe M, Candy, David Guthman, Ashton Wren, BKRS7, Blargnar, Chad Costin, Gus Calvo, Henry, Jesse Birch, Jesse Wood, Jon Snow, Larulian Sheep, Lovable Christie, Mr. Monocled Metroid, Super NX64, and ZAIN.